So, Chris, what were your thoughts on this movie overall?
You know, you mentioned this movie was made and released in 2012. It's hard to believe 7 years from the date that we record this, the year we record this, has gone. You know, in most sequels of movies, for as many movies as Marvel has done, 23 in fact, you kind of lose track of all other movies and focus on the one that's out. Especially with something like the Avengers. The Avengers themselves have 6 movies between them. And you kind of focus on the movie that's out. So it was Avengers, then Age of Ultron, so on and so forth. But for a team up, I mean, I enjoyed the movie overall. My question is this, and you can't really talk about this without going to Iron Man 1, which wasn't Disney, but he did slap the folder down. And, you know, you saw the Avengers Initiative. So I'm going to pose a little impromptu question to you. When you saw that scene, who did you want to be in the Avengers movie?
Well, so that question's a little complicated because who did I want to see and who did I believe I'd see were a little different. I wanted Captain America, obviously. I wanted the Hulk. I wanted Hawkeye, who plays a role, but it's not as big as I think it probably should have been.
Agreed.
But he was used well. I wanted to see, obviously, Iron Man. I wanted to see Spider-Man, but at the time, that wasn't even a possibility. I wanted to see War Machine, who we did see, but not in the Avengers.
Correct.
I wanted to see... Then you have your ancillary characters. You know, you have the ones they brought into the Avengers after the fact that I thought would fit well, like the Ant-Mans and the... I wanted to see Black Panther, who we didn't get until after the first movie. I wanted to see him earlier. I thought he should have been there earlier. Thor, obviously, I wanted to see. You know, these are the Avengers, and everyone kind of knows the group of the Avengers, even if you weren't a comic book fan beforehand. And now, if you weren't really a comic book fan, this is the Avengers you know. But I think it's a pretty good representation of the Avengers throughout history.
I think so. I agree. I personally would have loved to have seen the Fantastic Four. Would have been a great addition to the Avengers as they were part of it. Like you said, throughout history, every Marvel superhero became an Avenger for an issue or a series of issues, just for that. But I would love to have seen Fantastic Four, maybe Firestar. You know, there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of underlying characters that you see in the comics that you would like to see more of. But they did a great, over the years, they did a great ensemble.
They did. And look, if you talk Avengers, right, just from the comic book perspective, right, the founders were, who do you, let me throw it to you. I'm going to give you a name. You tell me if you think they're a founder or not. Hawkeye.
Yes.
Okay. You're wrong. Thor.
No.
Yes. Captain America.
Of course.
No. Iron Man.
Wow. I thought I was a comic book nerd.
Iron Man.
Yeah.
Yes. Black Panther.
Yes.
No. Black Widow.
No.
Yes. No, you're right. No. Black Widow, no. So, again, like I said, the founders of the original organization from 1963 to 2004, that's the list I'm looking at. We have the founders, Iron Man, Thor, Ant-Man, Wasp, and Hulk. In the 1960s, the recruits were Captain America, Hawkeye, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Swordsman, Hercules, Black Panther, Vision, and Black Knight. Most people don't associate Black Knight, Hercules, Swordsman at all.
No,
they do associate Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch to some degree. However, they're more heavily associated with being Magneto's kids. Mm-hmm. Then, in the 70s, we added Black Widow, Mantis, Beast, Moondragon, Hellcat, Two Guns Kid, Miss Marvel, Falcon. That's another one I like to see.
Yeah.
In the 80s, Wonder Man, Tigra, She-Hulk, Captain Marvel, Star Fox, Namor, Dr. Druid. Then you go into the late 80s. You have Mockingbird, War Machine, Thing, Moon Knight, Firebird, Post Inferno, which is 89 to 90, Demolition Man, Forgotten One. You can kind of get my point here, right?
Yeah.
Notice I have not said Spider-Man yet.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, who people very closely associate with the Avengers, did not show up until the UN Charter recruits, which was 91 to 92. Also in that group was Sandman Rage, Machine Man, Living Lightning, Spider-Woman, Crystal, Thunderstrike, and Darkhawk. None of those people are remembered other than Spider-Man. So, I mean, it's not till the new Avengers shows up that you end up with Luke Cage, Wolverine, but that's a whole other group.
Yeah.
Post-Civil War, you have nobody you would know except for Vision. Heroic Age comics, 2010 and 11. You have Captain, Spider-Woman, Valkyrie, Sharon Carter, Nova, Ant-Man, Iron Fist. Like, it just, the list goes on and on. Marvel Now, which is 2012 to 2013. Havoc, Sunspot, Cannonball, Manifold. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And like you said, ironically, you know who's not here?
Who?
Anybody from the Fantastic Four. But Punisher's in there, and the Savage Avengers. Yeah. You have Flux, Yondu. Yondu's there. Oh, no, that's Guardians of the Galaxy. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind. 1978. Young Avengers, Hulking, Hawkeye, Speed. You get the point, though, right?
Yeah.
Tons and tons and tons and tons of characters have made their way through the Avengers. And we kind of have this grouping in our head that we believe to be like the founders. But the original ones were Iron Man, Thor, Ant-Man, Wasp, and Hulk. Ant-Man and Wasp are not used in the original movie. They're not till Phase 2.
That's correct. And it was Wasp, if I remember correctly, it was Wasp who formed the Avengers. It was Wasp and then Ant-Man followed because they were together. But I think she formed the Avengers and had everybody come on, if I'm not mistaken. I could be.
They were all part of Avengers #1. What it says for Thor, it says current member of the main Avengers team. For Ant-Man, it says former leader of the Avengers AI, the Avengers Academy, currently merged with Ultron into Cyborg. Hulk resigned from the team in Avengers #2, rejoins the Avengers in Avengers vs. X-Men #11. Active with Wasp is active with West Coast in West Coast Avengers Volume 2, number 32 in 1988. Mm-hmm. Former member of the Avengers Utility Division and founder. Iron Man is the founder of the original roster. Joined West Coast branch in West Coast Avengers Volume 2, number 184. Current member of the main Avengers team.
Wow.
So Anthony Edward, Tony Stark. But yeah, so I mean, there's all kinds of Captain America. The notes next to him are given retroactive founding member status in place of the Hulk. Active as the captain in Avengers number 300 in 1989. Former leader of the Avengers Unity Division as Steve Rogers. Currently member of the main Avengers team. So in issue number 300, now again, this is all actually pre-Disney. So,
right.
But in 1989, Steve Rogers becomes a founder all of a sudden. Yeah. You know, that's just not how it actually happened. He joined the Avengers early. He was in he was in issue number 4, right. But that's still not a quote unquote founding member.
But you think of the term captain, you think he would be a founding member.
Absolutely. But apparently he was not.
No.
But now let's go into the characters they show here in our version of the team.
Sure.
And we have Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Black Widow, who's Romanoff. We have Hawkeye, who's Clint
Barton.
What is his name?
Clint Barton.
Clint Barton. And Thor, right? Mm-hmm. Did I miss anybody?
Nick Fury.
Nick Fury heads up S.H.I.E.L.D. or the event.
Maria Hill, Agent Coulson. Yeah.
Right. So we have those. But they're not really they're not really Avengers. They're just part of the initiative, right?
Right. They're part of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love the way they introduce each one of them into this particular film. Now, we've had their movies. Each one of them had their own movies or were mainstays in someone's movie that gave us their backstory into how they end up as an Avenger. But just the way they kind of bring them into the fold, like when Romanoff is being quote-unquote tortured and Coulson calls, and he's like, it's for her. And the other guy goes, hello. He goes, oh, yeah, you're at such and such address on the 3rd floor. And I have a bird 8 miles out. I'll blow up the block before you get off the floor. Put her on the phone. And she's like, I'm interrogating him. He's giving me everything. I can't leave. And she's like, hold on. He takes the phone. She beats everybody up. That was so cool the way she like did a flip, landed on a guy with the chair. The chair breaks, and then she starts beating the other guy with the piece of the chair that was left.
That was classic humor because on the other end is Coulson actually waiting for Romanoff to be done.
And they keep cutting to him, and he's like...
It's almost like hold music, you know what I mean? He's sitting there, it's hold music on the phone.
So that was a cool way to introduce him. They introduced Hawkeye, and because they go into the scientist. I can't remember his name either, but he was in Thor.
Yes.
He's checking out the Tesseract, and he's like, well, where is he? He goes, oh, well, where does a hawk sit? Up in the perch. And so he's like sitting way up high looking out, and they walk over to this thing, and he talks about it being a door and how, well, no one's messed with it from this side. And Fury's like, this side? He goes, well, a door opens from 2 ways. Like, it's so obvious once he says it, you know?
Yeah. You don't actually think about it till he says it.
No. And then who comes through the door? That's how Loki's brought into the show. We see Loki come through, and that was pretty awesome. We have, how did they introduce us to Iron Man in the movie?
Basically, he was sustaining clean energy for Stark Tower. So he was at the bottom of the ocean, and he was connecting a couple of pipes together. And then once that happened, the lights went on, and Stark Tower becomes this pillar of clean, sustainable energy.
Right, which is what he wanted to do for everyone.
Right.
But, yeah, and then... Captain America gets introduced.
Captain America gets introduced just as we left him in Captain America, the first Avenger, in the post-credit scene where he's punching the bag, and Nick Fury comes to him and says, "Here's what we got. Here's the mission. Package at your apartment." But what we see in the post-credit scene in Captain America, we don't see here is when he steps out into Times Square, and he looks about, and he starts wondering to himself what had happened. So, but that's part of the post-credit ending you see that introduces Captain America. Right,
absolutely. And so yeah, and he knocks over the bag, and then he like just throws it up on his shoulder to carry a new one away or whatever. That was pretty cool. Who am I missing here?
The Hulk.
Oh, well, the Hulk, we see him. He's in a poor country.
Yes.
Helping people who are sick. And so we did this a little out of order. The reason why they call Romanoff is because after Loki shows up, he takes control of the scientist and of Hawkeye.
Yes.
And Romanoff, who's been in Budapest with Hawkeye and other places, she clearly cares about him. So Coulson calls her, and the only way he convinces her to beat them up is to tell them, the only reason why she stops the interrogation is to stop him, is to say that Clint is in trouble. Mm-hmm. He's been compromised, you need to come in. So that's why she agrees, which is cool because we see this play later with her where she's interrogating Loki, and she's acting like what he's saying is bothering her, and she starts crying, and he starts talking too much, which is such a typical dummy comic book thing to do or cartoon thing to do. And it works here because they're playing on the idea that it is, in fact, kind of dumb to do. Yeah. So she gets from him that he's really only here and getting himself caught, just so he can get access to the Hulk. But so she goes to get the Hulk. She tells him, well, it's just you and me, because she gets a kid to say, my daddy's sick, come help. When they get to the house, the kid sneaks out of a window. He assumes someone's trying to hurt him. It turns out it's Romanoff, and she says, well, it's just you and I. And then once he agrees to come in, he goes, well, how do you keep it from coming? You haven't had an incident in a year. How do you keep him from showing up? And she goes, he goes, I have a secret. I don't tell him my secret, something like that. And then she's like, all right, you can all stand down. He's like, oh, I thought it was just us.
That scene, okay. I'll get to Ruffalo later, but that scene where